So let's kick things off now then. So just to clarify again, I'm Rosie McKenzie, the Company Engagement Manager for the WDI, and welcome everyone to our June edition of the 2020 webinar series, for which I'm very excited to say that we're joined by H&M and Unilever. We'll introduce the speakers in a second, but they will be discussing their organisation's reactions to the COVID-19 pandemic. Just a couple of housekeeping points. Please do send any questions you have through the question function on your taskbar, and we'll get to them at the end. And if you have any technical problems or audio problems, please also send them through that means. So before we introduce the speakers, I just wanted to frame today's conversation. The pandemic we find ourselves in has, of course, devastated countless people's lives on both a very personal as well as a professional level. And I know we all feel deeply for them. There is a plethora of information out there around how companies are reacting to the current circumstances to try and minimise that impact, from the World Economic Forum's COVID Action Platform to research by usual suspects McKinsey and PwC to Just Capital's US-focused COVID-19 corporate response tracker. The level of effort different companies have shown, of course, varies hugely, and I'm pleased to say that today we're joined by two organisations that have invested considerable effort and resources in tackling this trying situation we are in. So we have Annie Wu, who is the Global Diversity Manager at H&M, and Lena Nair, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Unilever. Many thanks to you both for joining us today, when I know you're even busier than usual, so many thanks indeed. Annie, if I could maybe ask you first to quickly introduce yourself and your roles and responsibilities, that would be great. And then Lena, if you could do the same, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Annie Wu, and I have been working for the H&M Group now for over 7 years, and in my current role as the Global Diversity Manager for almost 2.5. My background is actually employment law. That's where I spent most of the time in my career before diving into retail. So it was a different industry switch for me, and also into HR or more HR related topics. And so, yeah, this has been a very interesting, challenging time. And of course, you know, with crises on top of crises on top of each other, I think for the last couple of weeks and months, it's definitely not boring, my job. So I'm doing a couple of different things that are, I would say, outside my usual responsibilities as well.
Lovely,
So,
thanks Annie.
Yeah.
Lena, if we could have a quick intro from you, that would be lovely.
Hi Annie, Rosie, and hello to all our lovely audience listening in. I'm Lena Nair, and I'm privileged to lead human resources for Unilever. We have 160,000 people in 170 countries, so you can imagine how much the pandemic has caused our, caused disruptions to the way we think about business and work. So I've been with Unilever for 27 years. So I'm, been with Unilever forever, joined 27 years ago as a management trainee. My background, I did electronics and telecommunications engineering, believe it or not, and then decided pretty quickly that I wasn't a great engineer and moved to do a management degree in human resources, and I've loved human resources since then. So that's my story in brief.
Lovely, thanks Lena. Super. Okay, so let's dive into the meat of today's discussion. And first of all, kind of just a few scene setting questions. Could I just ask you both to outline what your initial response has been to the crisis in terms of workforce management, of course, and maybe looking especially at those on fixed-term contracts and contingent workers. Lena, if we could go to you first.
Sure. We had a very simple framework that we put into place. We said we would protect lives and livelihoods. We would ensure business continuity, and we would future-proof our business. We would come out of this stronger. And sort of that became the framework for many, many of the actions we did. So under protecting lives and livelihoods, we were very quick to react, and we said we will protect our workforce from sudden drops in pay. And we clarified that our workforce means everybody works for Unilever and maybe temporary, maybe on our sites, in our offices, as long as they're putting all the hours in the day working for Unilever. It doesn't matter if they're employed by a Sodexo or employed by someone else or self-employed. We would protect all of them from sudden drops in pay. So we were very quick to say that. We also said we would give credit of up to $500 million to all our smaller term suppliers. We also donated 100 million worth of products, that sanitizers, soaps, and everything that we know can fight against the virus, to governments and hospitals and in all the countries we operate in. So that's what we did under protecting lives and livelihoods. Ensuring business continuity was all about ensuring that we had the best safety protocols in place, because our manufacturing facilities were running. The world needs soap. The world needs cleaning products. The world needs disinfectants. This is a time that Unilever has to continue making all the things that we know will keep people safer till a vaccine comes for the virus, is discovered that stops the virus. So we put some of the best safety protocols in place to take care of our people, to ensure that our supply resilience continued and we could continue to serve our consumers who needed our products at this time. And last but not the least, we put a whole lot of effort in saying, how are we future-proofing our business? So we put loads of initiatives in place, like ensuring people can learn and develop future-fit skills, like looking at the trends of where our consumers are pivoting to. They're pivoting to cocooning themselves. They're pivoting to online everything. So we started looking at what do we need to do today to ensure the business comes out stronger in the next 2 to 3 years. So all of this together is what we sort of unleashed in the very first weeks as it became clear there was a global pandemic.
Lovely, thank you, Lena. Yeah, a truly all-encompassing and thought through process there. Annie, there's the same question to you. What was the initial response to the crisis?
Our initial response, we have what we consider our own employees. We have 180,000 of them globally, because we at current have 7 brands that are related to the H&M group and over 5,000 stores if you count all the different brands. So of course, for us as well, the health and safety of our colleagues all around the world was the most important thing. What we have is, of course, our store staff, which are the most. We also have our customer service centers, and then, of course, our warehouse and logistics centers. And throughout this pandemic, what we wanted to really make sure was also, that their health, well-being, mentally and physically, as well as everyone related to them, would be the safest that we can manage. And because we also don't have our own suppliers, our own production lines, we partnered actually with a lot of other larger retail to make sure that we could support them as well, or as best possible throughout this period, because no one could really foretell how long this would go on. But, we are a really deep value-driven company because we still are a family company. The family that started H&M has owned the company for over 70 years, and we want to treat everyone like family. But this company is also going through transformation. So I think what Alina also just mentioned about future-proofing our company was most important for us during this time. And we also actually gave free lessons, free English lessons to everybody around the globe to make sure that while people were at home, they were able to still be productive and feel productive as we waited and saw what every country would do with their curfews and quarantine laws.
Thanks, Annie.
So
yeah, I think
that's a quick summary.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Again, I think really great to see such far-reaching measures, and also some really innovative ones there, and giving people the opportunity to develop themselves whilst in lockdown. So that's really great. Lovely. So, how many of these measures that Unilever and H&M are putting in place, how many do you think will be carried through to become permanent? I think we can all agree that we're not sure at all what the world is going to look like in the next coming months and years. But is there scope for these extra measures to stay in place? Lena, if we could go back to you first.
And post-COVID is not as helpful. We must think about living with COVID. This is going to be with us for some time. And there are two parts to this. The first thing, I feel incredibly lucky, or you could call it foresight, that many of the things we invested in are now in prime time and are on steroids. Let me give you a few examples. One, we passionately believe that lifelong learning is here to stay. So we had invested in a platform called Degree. That platform has millions of pieces of content on it, curated internally, externally. We've encouraged people to create content within the company in a massive scale. Today, Degree is on fire because everyone is consuming 5 times the amount of content and learning they consumed. We had a point of view that the world is getting more flexible, and we had created this sort of inner mobility platform where people could raise a hand if they had capacity or lend a hand if they had capacity. And it didn't matter if you had 5% of your time as capacity, you could do something that was interesting to you. Flex today has been such a huge platform for us for redeploying people from businesses that are struggling, like our ice cream business, because not enough people are consuming ice cream outside of the home, to businesses like sanitizers and soap, which are seeing such a demand upsurge that we can barely cope. So this flex and fluidity has helped us. We had Una, our chatbot in HR, which answers all questions. Una is on steroids. Una sends you a health card every day, which helps you sort of fill it up. And for me to know at the touch of a button how many people in Unilever are healthy at any point in time. So, EAPs, we had invested in employee assistance programs across all the countries we operate in. And, those calls have seen 155% increase, and month after month continues to increase. We've seen huge number of people going to our website. We always say that nobody in Unilever should need more than one call, one click, one chat away from feeling well. So the first part is I see many things that that we had invested in that have got accelerated now. We'd invested in agile ways of working, and people were like, what is all this? Why do I have to do these stand-up meetings, squad teams, Kanban boards, scrum teams, flow to work? But today, the whole business is working in agile ways, including the leadership executive, which has a daily stand-up, every 2 weeks has a retro meeting, is putting backlog of actions to be done, is flowing to work. So many of the things we invested in, seeing the trends that were coming, which is more digitization, more automation, more flexibility, more lifelong learning, they're all on steroids. And I feel exceptionally lucky that these things were in place and I've now have great pull in the business. The second part is the new things, because I believe some of these changes are forever. So for example, the footprint of office. Do we need the 1,300 offices we have all across the world as Unilever, factory sites, R&D sites, offices? Do we need to think about how we take some of these best practices of working agile, working in virtual ways into our new reality? So some of the trends we are seeing, which we think are going to come, one is that offices are going to be the safe haven. So there will be a set of people who still want to come into office, and there will be a set of people who will say, I will turn up in office only a day a week. So we will see trends like distributed offices, people working out of little satellite offices where a few people come together. So I see some of these trends, which is offices as safe havens, the importance of frontline workers being dialed up, the things like talent battle being a lot less. It's going to be war for employment more than war for talent. So some of those early trends we are seeing will stay. So in short, the trends we began to see 2 or 3 years ago have just got accelerated. And new trends are coming, which needs us to respond. And in my view, quite a few of them will stick around.
Brilliant, thanks, Lena. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that the ability to be agile has definitely paid off over the past couple of months. Absolutely, and I think it sounds really lovely that you have almost real-time data on how healthy and well everyone feels, and that people can help each other out. But if they've got a bit of extra spare capacity, I think it's a lovely way of connecting people. Annie, I don't know from the H&M side how things might develop and whether they could become permanent.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything Lena said sounds amazing because that's where we want to be. We are nowhere near as digital. What we have done in the last, I would say, 5 years is to invest a lot more into being more digital, both for colleagues and for our customers. And I think with this, COVID crisis, we saw that was so much easier. Being as digital as possible and flexible was the way to communicate with both our colleagues and our customers. And that, I think, is just something that we really need to ramp up for our company, at least, because it does then will be able, to give us all the data and all the tracking that we can possibly use to help everyone within the company and also to communicate with them. Because I have to say, one of the hardest things that we found during this, because as you know, most of our staff is from stores and they're not in front of a computer. They're not, they're not sitting in an office. It's a physical retail environment and store. And so for us, the communication with them was the most challenging part. And that is, I think, what we recognize that we have to fix one way or another. And we've already started investing in that and rolling out programs in order to help support that. And we'll just have to ramp that up because right now we are present in 74 different countries, and that digital solution is, I would say, about in a third of them. So that work will be ramped up and continued for sure. As an example of one of the things, yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you, Annie. I think you're absolutely right that we've all had to become very comfortable with being digital and getting used to all the different complications that brings. But I think you're absolutely right that it's the key to the future. Right, lovely. So the next question is around what the challenges have been in dealing with a virus like this, and the steps you've taken to prevent health risks and manage negative impacts on the business and the workers individually. We've already touched on some of them, but Annie, if there's anything else you'd like to add, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first actions that we actually decided on was to pay all of our employees for the first 14 days as each country decided that they were going to go into self-isolation or quarantine, because that really gave us some time to focus on what the next steps would be, because every country, as we know, has different laws and regulations when it comes to payment and employment. And so we wanted to make sure that our employees were protected as much as possible during at least the first 14 days. So we made that blanket announcement pretty early on. And The other thing that we did to help support our supply chain, like I mentioned earlier, is we actually joined a call to action driven by the ILO, the ITUC, and also with the Union Industrielle to try and talk about the challenges for production workers. Because we don't own any of our factories outright, we felt that it really was necessary for us to band together with other large retailers to try and support the garment industry with no social systems in place at all, as much as we possibly could. Because I'm sure a lot of you saw in the papers that some retailers were actually saying that they couldn't pay their suppliers. And we felt that it was necessary that we try and support the government to make sure that, you know, these garment workers got as much support as possible.
Amazing, thanks, Annie. I think it must have been incredibly reassuring for your colleagues to get that pay as soon as any risk was cited in the country. I think that's just great. And of course, collaboration is key to all of these things. We do live in a very global world, and the fact that you are part of the Call to Action coalition group is really great, and again really proactive in terms of paying suppliers. They do tend to be the ones with the more vulnerable workers, and that is a fantastic process to be part of. Lena, if there's anything you'd like to add from the Unilever side?
Is this on the global scale of issues or anything specific, Rosie?
Yes. Yeah. So just sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the challenges that you've come across and the specific measures you've taken to prevent health risks would be great.
Yeah, you know, one of the things about Unilever is its globality. Like I was saying, we operate in 190 countries. And unlike many multinationals, we're not big in just one country. We are sort of a collection of being medium to large in many, 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 many countries. So the range and scale of issues that have, come to the fore have been unprecedented. So let me give you a few examples. 17 of the poorest countries we operate in didn't have tests. And we bought 250,000 tests and donated to these governments, hoping that the governments can use them and some of our employees will also get tested. We, all of Kenya, the country, has 177 ICU beds, while Unilever has 45,000 people in its plantations in Kenya. Ecuador, all of Ecuador has 8 ICU beds, and we had 8 employees sick at one point in time. So we have found that we are leaning in ways we never thought possible. We are leaning into issues of supporting governments for tests, converting our warehouses into ICU beds, helping move train staff from one country to the other with the support of the government, making ventilators in our factories, which we never thought possible. It's been full on. We have gone on a limb to do what we can to protect our people and our communities in all the countries we operate in. And like I was saying, we have put in health systems which allows everyone to report every day how they're doing. We have put systems into place for isolated and lonely employees. We have a special program for vulnerable employees and immunocompromised employees. We have a special program for those who have huge caregiving responsibilities. We have support systems for domestic abuse, because in confined spaces, domestic abuse is going up. There's all sorts of bullying and harassment behaviors that have gone up in the world. So the range and scale of issues has actually left me quite breathless, because almost all of them are unprecedented issues. Asian-looking employees being harassed in supermarkets, the crowd coming and spitting on the doorknobs of expat homes in Egypt. I could go on and on. And we have more than 1,000 expatriate families all over the Unilever world. So we have had to put tremendous health and safety measures in place to take care of the lives of all our people, besides putting fantastic safety protocols in our manufacturing sites and in our sales establishments. I hope that gives you a bit of why we're all having pretty sleepless days and nights right now.
No, I can imagine it. It sounds like there is just this has just led to such a myriad of unpredictable and troubles and problems that you could just never have guessed. So it does sound like you got a lot on your plate, but also lots of measures in place to try and deal with them. Lovely. So the next question is more about data, and I'm sure everyone will agree that the best decisions are based on concrete data as much as possible. And that's what the WGI, of course, aims to do. The aim is to help companies collect data throughout their direct operations and their supply chain, and try and help companies identify any gaps in the workforce management. Annie, if we could come to you first, I don't know if the WGI has helped with that, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think definitely has helped because, you know, we are moving into this world where transparency is going to be key. And that's where, at least in our sustainability work, I think we've led in transparency as much as possible. And, you know, data is part of it. And I think organizations such as yourself has pushed us to make these data-driven decisions and also project decisions to instill more digital collection agencies that we can use within the organization to provide this data, not just to your organization, but to many others. And that keeps us honest. And I think that is the wave of the future. So it's good that there are organizations like yourselves out there to keep on pushing us in order to do that more.
Yeah. Lovely, thanks, Annie. Lena, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Yes, that's great, Annie. You've articulated it really well. You know, many years ago, 27 years ago, when I finished engineering and I decided to go for human resources, my father was very disappointed. He said, you know, why are you doing human resources? I mean, it's all soft and fluffy. Nobody really cares. It's a back office function. You need to be sort of doing this engineering thing. And I often reflect that what seemed like a freak choice, that why would somebody who's structured and numerical go and do HR, in today's century has actually become relevant, because I'm a huge fan of more data and more human coming together. Yeah, and that has pushed us in Unilever to digitize huge, to have data at our fingertips on anything you can do. We invested in HR data analytics and insights about 10 years ago. We have a full team of PhD scientists who do amazing data crunching for us, and we're very supportive of the Workplace Disclosure Initiative. As you know, we want, because data is the only thing that finally helps you make objective decisions. Otherwise, it's everyone's opinions. So, I mean, you know, for example, when I said we said we'd protect all our workforce from sudden drops in pay, and then we're scrambling in country after country to determine how many people actually wear a Unilever T-shirt. They might never be on our rolls, but they work for us. They do stuff that makes a difference to us. They're somewhere in our long value chain making a difference to us. So, you know, having all of this data has been powerful in taking some of the stands that we will take care of people, having confidence that we know where those people are and we can find them and we can look after them. So I'm a huge fan of data and everything you're doing to throw a spotlight on what's going on in the world. It improves transparency, it improves the quality of decision, it brings fantastic insights. You know, we have data on productivity. So I don't have to rely on anything. I don't have to say it's my opinion that people are working hard. I have data to show that people are working longer and harder than they've ever done during these COVID times. I can tell you precisely how many meetings have been held on Teams, what's the collaboration time, what's the focus time for the business in totality. I can, I don't have to tell you people are engaged because it's my opinion. We have, surveys that are every day looking at employee sentiment across the world. So I'm a huge fan of bringing data and the rigor that data brings into decision making and into moving people to action.
Lovely, thanks, Lena. Yeah, I think the data really does make the world go round, and the more that the WGI can help standardise the workforce information that companies are collecting and reporting, the more we can help, definitely, with that. Lovely. Okay, so you've both spoken around the fact that future-proofing the businesses has been a big object as we work through these current trying circumstances. I wonder if you could pinpoint a couple of the biggest learnings from the past few months. Annie, you spoke about the need to increase the digitalization of the business. Is there anything else that that will be a priority in the future?
I think it's more collaboration in teams and being more agile and fluid in how people work together. I mean, I think what we've seen during this time is that organizational structures maybe don't make as much sense as they used to. Hierarchies don't make as much sense as they used to, where more competence-based teams and, you know, being flexible in jumping in and out of projects, that actually has, like, breaking up the silos within a company, I think has really helped. And I think people actually really enjoy working this way a lot more because they feel like they can contribute a lot more as well. So, you know, that, and I would say more communications in general, internal, external. It goes with the transparency that I was speaking about before. I think people everywhere, our colleagues and people in the world, want to know how we're thinking, what we're thinking as corporations, and why we're making certain decisions.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, the companies are increasingly being held to account in the public arena, and I think that's you know, that's a good thing. Increased transparency is always a good thing. Lovely, thank you, Annie. Lena, is there anything you'd like to add from the biggest learnings that Unilever will take forward from this?
You know, Annie's made some great points in communication and silo busting, and those are absolutely true. A couple more that I'd love to add is, one is, you know, we've been in our leadership development constantly talking about how the inner game is your foundation for a good outer game, and the inner game is a combination of your learning agility, your sense of purpose and service, and personal mastery and resilience. And we have seen that through this crisis, that it's really your inner game that supports you and creates a foundation for you to act and take some of the business decisions. So we continue to strengthen our investment behind the inner game of our leaders. You know, what can we do to help their resilience? What can we do to help their sense of purpose and service, and so on and so forth? I mean, we are putting all 160,000 people through purpose workshops. 60,000 have already been through it, and we're now doing it virtually, because God knows when we'll all get together in cohorts and in workshops. So that's one message, that this is the time when leaders have to lead, and leaders with stronger inner games will make for better leaders than those who don't have that strength of an inner game. And the second thing, which is new for our world, is to be kind and compassionate, because we're all in the same storm, but we are not in the same boat. People have different challenges. Some are, you know, managing young children who are not in school. Some are having immunocompromised people in their homes. Some are really struggling with the extended hours and days. Some are just struggling with their back sitting in a chair. So this is the time to be kind, not to make assumptions that we're all in the same storm and therefore we can all respond in the same way. This is a time for kindness and compassion in the world, to understand that, yes, it's the same storm, but we are not in the same boat, and understand, listen, be compassionate.
Thank you, Lena. Yeah, I absolutely, if we all come out of this even just a little bit nicer, that it's going to make the world a whole much better place. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right that one of the biggest risks that companies mention within their responses is leadership and talent retention, and almost in the same breath it's mentioned as an opportunity as well. So obviously people are absolutely crucial and a key part of any business. Lovely. Okay, so the next question is more about the health and safety and well-being aspect of this topic. We know it has a direct impact on many aspects of a business, obviously financial, because staff retention and turnover and training, but also legal ramifications in terms of compliance, and of course the reputational impact. We've spoken a lot about the different platforms that each company uses and how you try and connect staff. Is there anything specific to ensure their health and safety and well-being? Lena, should we go to you first? So
you're asking about platforms, technology platforms that we're using?
We've definitely spoken about them. Is there anything else that has been really helpful in ensuring that the health and safety and well-being of staff at the moment?
I think it was helpful for us to define a set of principles, because one of the things we've discovered operating in so many countries is that every country has been in a different phase of denial and discovery, a different phase of recovery and rehabilitation, and a different phase of response and containment. It's not been the same answer in two countries. Everyone's done it differently. And what we've also seen is that the level of risk appetite has been different in different countries. And when you're a global player, you have to have some global set of principles that you hang on to. And what's been useful for us is to put down our principles of how we would look after people's health and safety during this time. And one of the things we said was that we would operate with complete prudence and care, and that we would be even more conservative than governments. So, for example, one of the things we've said when we are coming back into easement phase and return to the workplace, as some of the countries are beginning to come back to some sense of normalcy, we've said Unilever will have a 21-day gap from when a government says it's okay for you to go to work, and we say no, we won't go to work for 21 more days after the government said it's okay, because we want to use that time to be really sure, make sure our people are feeling ready, make sure our workplace is ready, make sure we're exercising great prudence and care before we support some of our people to get back to work. So I think it's been useful to align around a set of principles and not just be guided by every government and every government scientist advisor, because the advice has varied so much. Yes, I do think we've benefited a lot from all the technology investments we've made. I spoke about some of them today, our chatbot Una and our all our platforms on Flex and our platforms in Agile, our platforms on learning, etc. We've certainly benefited from those. And I would accelerate the digitization even more as I look into the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Lena. I think allowing that breathing space between the official going back to work announcement and the actual going back to work for the Unilever staff will definitely reassure a lot of people and hopefully prevent any kind of secondary outbreaks. Anya, is there anything from the H&M side that you would like to add?
We did quite a lot, the same as what Lena just mentioned. We also were more conservative than the individual local authorities, because, as Lena mentioned, every country was still operating very differently and is in different phases depending on where in the world they are. And so we also had a set of principles that we made every decision through. For an example, what we did in the US is we actually closed all of our stores prior to any measures being enacted there. And what we've been doing as countries start reopening now for our store side, we are also giving at least a 7 to 14 day leeway to see kind of where it goes and if the governments also adjust their regulations in any way. For our warehouse and customer service staff, they have been actually the opposite and working so many more hours. And we also wanted to make sure that their health and safety was taken care of. So we produce videos for warehouse staff, for example, in the UK, to really emphasize what were the steps that they really needed to take to protect themselves. But we also wanted to do our part for the whole, and we also donated at least 100,000 face masks to Spain and Italy during the time when they were at their peak. We also produced and worked with our suppliers to produce 3 million long sleeve aprons that were delivered to Sweden. We also provided basic clothing to the Swedish hospitals. And, you know, a couple of other examples like this where we wanted to be able to use our suppliers in the best way. So that is a blend, I think, of what we've been doing for our own colleagues and also for trying to do our part as much as possible for the world.
And I think that's fantastic when companies do take that wider view of their responsibility to society, definitely. Lovely. Okay. So the last question then, before we move on to the audience's questions, is around what you're hearing from investors and other key stakeholders on this topic. What's the story from that side? Annie, if we could come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, we know that investor interest has grown in the last few years, especially when it comes to data and reporting around the workforce. And, you know, we want this not to be just something that is an aside that the investors are looking into. I mean, I really love what you said before, Lena, that the future is about being human and having data, because that is how people should make decisions. And without the data, you can't make decisions, at least for a global workforce like we have in a educated way, if you don't have that data. And investors and stakeholders are making the same decisions that way. So I think, you know, they're going to be clamoring for more information, data, and transparency. And we just want to be able to provide as much of that as possible.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks, Annie. Lena, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think Annie makes some important points. It's definitely going up the interest. My sense is most investors that I've interacted with believe in the long-term future of the business. So they want you to do the things that are right for the business in the longer term, not respond to a few weeks of the crisis, but they want you to do the things that are right for the business in the long term. You know, we've always said at Unilever that we have a multi-stakeholder approach, that we care about all our stakeholders, our consumers, our customers, our employees, our shareholders. We've always said that. So the investors do like it that we believe in ensuring all stakeholders are finding a way to win and grow through this crisis. So I'm hopeful and encouraged by investors who are beginning, some of them more progressive than others, but they are also endorsing much more multi-stakeholder approach. They're asking far more questions about sustainability, far more questions about what you're doing on diversity. They're asking far more questions about workforce pay, etc. So it's great. So transparency in data allows us to be able to show them the areas that we're doing well and areas that we can show the spotlight to improve. So I believe it's in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What you've both said is what's ringing true from the WDI end as well. We know investors are increasingly interested in all this kind of workforce information that goes beyond the typical financially salient, traditionally reported metrics, and that, you know, from a very personal level, I'm sure we all agree that hopefully that will continue in the future. Lovely. Well, that's the kind of end of the formal bit. Thank you so much, Annie and Lena. I'm now actually going to hand over to my colleague Anya Clark, who has been very helpfully helping with the tech in the background and handling the questions. So Anya, over to you.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you to the panel. I was listening very intently in the wings here and monitoring the questions. The first one that we have is about monitoring the effectiveness of policies, well-intentioned policies introduced in the supply chain, and if the outcomes of those are not being met, what actions you know, are H&M and Unilever taking respectively to remedy that? Annie, maybe we could start with yourself.
I think I need that question clarified a little bit more. What do you mean by, I guess, what kind of policies in the supply chain?
Yeah, so I guess any policies that have been introduced in terms of kind of supply chain management throughout the crisis, you know, if there's a way of monitoring the effectiveness of those and through data collected, and if the outcomes of those policies have not been met, you know, how do you intervene to kind of remedy that?
Well, for H&M and our other brands, I mean, we haven't really introduced new policies when it comes to working with our suppliers, because, you know, we use and offer our business to the suppliers as we've always done. You know, we've obviously placed less orders in the last few months, but our process will always remain the same while we're working with them, you know, during this crisis or not.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Annie. Another question here. During this time of crisis, it's very easy to get distracted from areas such as diversity and inclusion. What are you doing to keep this on the agenda? Lena, maybe we could start with you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. At times like this, you know, people take their eye away from inclusion and some of the challenges to do with that. So yes, you know, we had gone to town in early March saying that we've gender balanced our management population, and you know, we had expressed our sort of happiness at getting the Catalyst Award for being one of the large-scale organizations that's balanced its workforce and has 50-50 male and female. So we absolutely want to keep that momentum going. Now, one thing that has brought inclusion to the top table again is the events that have been happening in North America, the challenges of racial justice. So we are absolutely continuing to put inclusion at the top table, discussing issues of inclusion, discussing issues of racial diversity. We are discussing issues of harassment, bullying, like I said, domestic abuse is going up at this time. So we've used the pandemic to shine a spotlight on the issues of inclusion that have got exaggerated or exacerbated in this crisis. So keep the focus on, the issues may vary, the debates may vary, but keep the focus on at leadership top tables would be my advice.
Annie, do you have a similar or a different response to that?
No, I mean, I think during these times, this is even more important than ever. You know, the last few months with COVID and the way that we've had to work differently, I think inclusion has been actually more present on top of everyone's minds because of just a different way of working. You know, you have to learn to include people in a much more different way than people might have worked before. And as what Lena was just mentioning, I mean, I spent basically the last week working with the issues that's been happening in the US. We just released a statement on Monday about our support to the Black community and what is happening in the US. And so amazed to see the support that, you know, people worldwide is actually giving this process right now. And, you know, these topics are not going away. And we saw that it's been ramping up over the last few years, I think because there is just becoming a greater divide in a lot of different countries. And we just need to, like Lena mentioned, keep this top of mind with all of our leadership and, you know, make sure that even though these conversations are hard to have sometimes, that they are still being had and that actions are following the statements. And yeah, I'm actually really happy to say that, you know, we are able to stand behind a lot of the statements that we've made in the past few years. And we just want to see more of this. And the world deserves better.
Thank you, Annie. Another question comes in. Are you concerned about the impact of plastics from PPE and increased use of products such as bleach will have on the environment and how we can balance protecting the well-being of people and the planet? Lena, I might start with you on that one.
Yes, it is absolutely something on our mind. As you know, we went external a few months ago, making big commitments on plastic that we would remove from the environment the amount of plastic we put in through our products. We said that we would go to 50% at least of our products having virgin plastic in the next 5 years. So we call it internally less plastic, better plastic, no plastic. And we have huge initiatives to do that. It is unfortunate that the pandemic has led to more use of plastic because that seems to be the only thing that can afford protection right now in terms of PPEs, face shields, elements of mask, elements of aprons. So I think at the moment we've all prioritized health and well-being of people, protecting lives. But once we've sort of all had a moment to stop reacting and to reflect, we will have to think about how we can create these products that people do need, but with less plastic or no plastic at all.
That's a great answer. Annie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've always wanted to do more around the reuse, recycle field. And we've been looking into so many different pilots on how we can prevent the use of not just plastics, but other non-recyclable materials. And we will continue to do so. We have really high goals to be climate positive and circular within the next few decades. So we want to keep to that as much as possible.
Fantastic. And Lena, maybe I'll ask you the next question because you did touch upon it briefly in the discussion earlier. Now that we know that we can achieve a lot more by working from home, do you think that this might become the new normal within the next couple of years?
Yes, I think the mindset of people has shifted. People have recognized that it is possible to work effectively and productively virtually. We did a survey among our people, and on an average, people are saying they still want to come to office. Nobody's saying I want to work 100% out of home, and nobody's saying I want to work 100% out of office. But we're finding that people are on the scale where they're far more willing to combine physical days in office with more virtual working, and the average sort of settled at 1.5 days. Most people would like a day and a half in the office in a week and spend the remaining 3.5 working days out of home. So I do think this is a trend here to stay. But we must not forget that while we celebrate this productivity, this lack of commuting, and thank God we can work even harder because we don't have to commute anymore, we might be losing something which we don't even know how to measure, the intangible social capital, the chat at the coffee station, the little bit of knowing how someone's feeling when you step out of the meeting room, or a quiet word with a colleague who's looking stressed. Those are all immeasurable. Those are intangible things that added to human capital and social capital. So yes, we have learned to work more effectively, and in the future there will be a combination of physical and virtual working, but let's not over celebrate it, because there are things we're going to lose that we don't even know what.
That's a great observation, Lena. Finally, I think I will finish on one last question before closing remarks, and I'll position this to Annie. Did you find yourselves having to pay suppliers for services that you did not receive since countries were on lockdown in order to kind of assist business continuity and small and medium enterprises?
We're still sorting all of that out right now. I mean, a lot of our logistics are backed up, as you can imagine, depending on which countries, and so I can't give an answer to that at the moment. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you very much. Fantastic. I think I'll leave it there, Rosie, and hand back to you. And if anybody has any other questions, please send them into the WDI team, and we can forward them on to the panelists for review. So thank you all very much.
Great, thanks for your help there, Anya. That was invaluable. I couldn't have done all that by myself. Lastly, just remains to say a massive thank you again to Annie and Lena. From everything you've said, it honestly sounds like you have an absolute ton on your plate. So thank you so much for making the time to speak to us today. It's been invaluably useful for me anyway to hear everything that's going on, and also massively encouraging and reassuring as well. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay well, stay connected. Bye everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day, night, morning, wherever you are.
Great, thank you both. That's brilliant.
Thanks, Dee.